CMV, iPad kids won't turn out any worse than any previous generation. iPad kids aren't gonna make Gen Alpha kids any worse than previous generations. People have always tried to say that there was something ruining children. In the 40s to 50s, it was radio. In the 60s to 70s, it was TV. In the 80s to 90s, it was video games. And from 2012 to present day, people have been saying iPads will ruin Gen Alpha kids. But this is really just personal emotional insurance for them so they can have something to blame if the kids turn out horribly. I was born in 2008 and I wasn't necessarily an iPad kid, but my family did own an iPad that I used from time to time, almost entirely for games. And I should mention it wasn't my iPad, it was my parents' that they just let me and my sister play games on from time to time. People say that iPads shorten attention spans of children, and to some degree this might be true, but it's no different from in the 1940s when kids' attention spans were shortened by radio, or how 60s kids' attention was shortened by TV, or how 80s kids' attention was shortened by video games. Attention span shortening is just a normal part of technological evolution, and it's not just limited to kids either. You're probably reading this off your phone or computer, which shortens your attention too, and it doesn't make you any worse of a person. I guess you could change my mind if you convince me that iPads really are different and more detrimental than the things people blamed in the past. But I find that hard to do because by definition, we are living in literally the safest time period. Here's something if you don't believe me. You know, honestly, I can see where you're coming from on the different generations having different technological advances. There were always concerns on how it affected children, and definitely in like the 80s and 90s, the video games were a big thing. I mean, look at how many movies clown on kids just zombieing out looking at the TV. That's not to say it's a good stereotype, because I never got that zombie-like playing video games, but you know, here we are. The difference is that those previous advances that shortened attention span had guardrails. The programs/games had been refined, tested, and deemed safe for kids in certain age ranges. Not saying this doesn't get abused or that kids will find workarounds to explicit content if they want to. I'd like to change your view that the internet is no different than other forms of media that lowered attention span. This is another good point. The internet is a much different monster than television or radio or video games because anybody can throw anything they want out here and anybody can look at it. Sure, there are some sites that do have regulations, but kids will find places where there are none. Engaging in screen time isn't necessarily the problem. Not engaging with the immediate world around you is. We can only allocate our attention to so many things. iPad kids are already dopamine addicts with shortened attention spans and poor vocabulary and will be easily led and easily distracted adults. Obviously right now it's mostly speculation. We have no real idea how Gen Alpha and younger generations will be affected. We'll just unfortunately have to wait and see. You're making it sound like all that stuff didn't actually ruin those generations, LOL. Honestly, just look at your boomer grandparents glued to their TVs. It's not just because it's Fox News, it's because that was the fun thing to do, was TV. Just look at the thing. My nephew developed an Indian accent while he was 4 from watching those Finger Family videos for hours on end. Now that is an interesting side effect. I don't think I've ever heard of something like that. It's nothing we haven't seen before. My generation, Gen Z, is proper effed by this stuff too. They're just going to be a new level of effed. You forget what generation started the whole mobile gaming revolution. We had Game Boys with light, pocket arcade games, pocket casino games, Tamagotchi. We started the fire and don't want to take responsibility for it. Yeah, that's a little bit of a good point. 2003 born here, I think we were truly the last generation to hang out and play in the park. iPads are far more addictive than TVs or video games as they are truly multi-purpose. Can you use to see videos, play games, etc., and more likely to keep you hooked for longer. I think we were truly the last generation to hang out and play in the park. No, you were the first iChild generation with the first iParents. They came out when y'all were 4 to 6. Maybe you went to the park, but I'd wager a lot of your peers were tinkering with mommy's new toy. I agree with other commenters that it's more about having access to the internet, but I think the ease and constant use is a huge part of the problem too. Kids will sit at a family dinner table and watch videos instead of talking or at least listening to conversation. They don't develop basic social skills and struggle interacting with others. Links a YouTube short as proof to why iPad kids won't be worse off. Yeah, the irony there is a little funny, but it's not inherent to being an iPad kid that you watch YouTube. Is it? Oh God, is it? We will be fine. This generation and future generations will be fine. People are way too dramatic about things. I do think a lot of people like to jump to, oh, this generation, oh, it's over, we're done. But we really have to wait and see. We can't predict these things entirely. Change my view. If I come over to your house, I should never have to dry my hands on your bath towel. It seems I encounter this like half the time I go over to someone else's house. I go to the bathroom, wash my hands, and frantically look around for a hand towel. The walls are barren. The only porous material available is a used bath towel, so I grit my teeth and dry my hands with it. I understand that both my hands and the body that was dried by the bath towel are freshly washed, but either of us could have missed a spot, or the section of the bath towel I'm using could have dried your butthole. You also don't know how thoroughly your house guests wash their hands. They could be doing a rinse and then wiping their wet, dirty hands on the towel for your freshly clean body. I also understand that neither hand towels nor bath towels are a perfectly clean thing, but at least a hand towel has a 0% chance of vicariously touching your host's butthole and can be changed/washed more easily. Am I being classist here? Am I being just a little neurotic? Or is it a reasonable opinion that it's gross to dry my clean hands on someone else's bath towel? Thanks, y'all. You know, I don't think I've ever actually thought about it before, but yeah, it is a little gross to touch your friend's used bath towel where their butthole could have been just rubbed right on there, just flossed straight through. Nah, it's a power move. You walk out of the bathroom and I know you're either gross and didn't wash, or you basically touched my butthole. And that's when I have the upper hand, because I never touched your butthole. Is it a power move though? Because now your friend/guest has touched your butthole. Like, they have the power over you. I don't know where your logic is. I find it worse when there is a hand towel, but I get scolded because it's for decoration. If you only have decorative towels in your bathroom, do you not expect guests? Or are you hoping that they see the signal to never come back again? If you and I were in a long-term relationship, would you be okay drying your hands on my towel and vice versa? You said never, which includes all situations where a person could be over at another person's house. Are there really 0 situations where this is acceptable? Checkmate, atheist. Like, that's a pretty good point. If it's your partner, why would you not want them to touch your butthole towel, huh? You never have to dry your hands on anything, and you shouldn't be touching anyone's bath towels for the exact opposite of the reason you're concerned with. You shouldn't be wiping your hands on things they use to dry themselves. Shake your hands off and dry them on your pants, or just let them air dry. This isn't that complicated. Okay, but have you ever considered that air drying and letting liquid stay on my hands freaks me out, and I need them to get dry quicker than however long air drying takes? I think this may differ by household, but growing up, my family had an unused bath towel hanging on the door for drying hands. If you have a lot of people sharing one washroom, then the small towels get wet really quickly and might not be dry by the next time the next person uses it. I must note that it was understood that the towel on the door, it was a tiny bathroom and the door was very close to the sink, was only for hands and washed regularly, but others might not be used to the setup. If you're that concerned about it, that's fine. Then why not just take your own towels wherever you go? If you came over to my house, you would find a hand towel to dry your hands when you wash them. Only way the towel would have touched my ass is if you go beside the bidet to dry your hands, or actively search for my bath towel. Do you just think it's gross, or do you actually think it's unhygienic? I'm guessing the hygienic part is relatively negligible compared to everything else we touch on a moment-to-moment basis, like the door handle and light switch on the way out. Another valid point, it's probably more just the grossness. They're thinking, I don't want to touch my friend's butthole because that would be gay, and gay is bad, so say some people. This is why I keep a roll of paper towels in the bathroom. I don't give a F if you think it isn't aesthetic. People are so weird about the dumbest stuff sometimes. Am I just being a little neurotic? Yes. Well, I guess that answers that. CMV, one of the worst things that could happen to a person is being born in a third world country. So I'm from Nigeria and I moved to the USA years ago with my father, and based on my experiences, I believe living in a third world country is one of the worst things to happen to a person. I've seen how much my parents have sacrificed just to be in this country. I know how much money my father has paid to get us papers in the United States. I honestly couldn't even believe he had spent that much money. My dad studied industrial engineering in Nigeria, and it didn't even help him in the United States because most employers see that degree as worthless because he got it in a Nigerian university. He never studied here, and so now he has to settle for low-wage jobs. My dad works so hard, 6 days a week, and we basically live paycheck to paycheck. It's tough, not gonna lie. I just feel like our lives as a whole would be so much better and stress-free if not for the fact that we were born in Nigeria. Can see our country falling apart, and so now we were forced to make this hard journey here. I was also in Nigeria this summer, and the country is rife with so much poverty. These are getting worse every day, and the basic amenities I enjoy in the United States are like luxuries over there. While I was in Nigeria, there was a time my electricity went out and we had no electricity for almost an entire day. As a result, our water went out and we had to fill up buckets of water at someone else's house just to be able to wash dishes and flush the toilet. I once spoke to my dad and asked him, "So how does a person in Nigeria live a decent life and fulfill something for themselves?" And he told me he doesn't know. Degrees in Nigeria are almost useless now as there are no jobs whatsoever. So in conclusion, I feel like being from a third world country is one of the worst things to happen to a person because the struggles of living in one in the first place is stressful, draining, and horrible, while the struggles of leaving one is also horrible as you have to endure and sacrifice a lot. So either way, you will suffer. Unless you're rich, I guess. After reading through all of that, I do fully agree that yes, being born in a third world country does have its difficulties, but I don't think it's inherent to third world countries. It's really just being born in an impoverished state. Regardless of where you are, it is a difficult life. It depends more on the specific circumstances one is born to within a country. Someone born into the upper class in a third world country would be better off than someone born into dire poverty in the United States. This is kind of what I was saying. It's not so much of the location, it's really like the class position almost, and obviously being born, you don't get the choice of what position you're put in. I know I won the lottery by being born here. It might have been better had I been born in some other country, but I consider myself very lucky, especially as a woman. The one thing that you do have, which many here do not, is that exact understanding and perspective. Be grateful your parents had the courage and ambition to leave. May I add being born with developmental delays in a third world country as one of the most difficult positions in life? Yes, you may. A contender for a worse scenario is being born as a farm animal. As globally we breed about 80 billion farmed land animals a year compared to a mere 100 million-ish humans born. The odds are far higher to get into those shoes, in a way. Yeah, of course it would be worse if you're born as a farm animal. What are you talking about, dude? Of course. I'd say only if born poor there. Nigerian immigrants to the US generally, not saying you or your family, are some of the most highly educated and wealthy minorities around, with higher education attained than Asians. But having been to Uganda, yeah, it's insane what can happen there. Being born poor in a third world country is bad. If you were born in a third world country to wealthy locals/expats, I don't imagine life would be all that bad. I mean, ultimately, everybody's lives has their own, everybody has their own struggles, you know? This isn't saying if you're rich, you don't have problems, because sure, rich people do have problems. They're just different from what poor people have to deal with. Life is 100% luck. Your luck begins upon conception. As an atheist and LGBTQ member from a third world country with an economy that is getting worse as we speak, yes, you are right. LOL, especially here in Africa. Change my view, social media is destroying Western society slowly like a cancer. When people spend so much time looking at what other people are doing, they lose all creativity and chase what is cool. They're wasting time on their phone accomplishing nothing other than increasing their jealousy and anxiety while they can be spending that time being productive. All independence and privacy has gone out the window to oversharing and following meaningless trends. TikTok is the worst iteration of this. The algorithm is specifically made to influence young people's worldview. From the moment you create an account, you're bombarded with dangerous messaging. Gen Z is completely addicted to this, and the platform is now where the youngest generation is receiving their news. Why does China have a different version of TikTok? It's almost like they know it's poison, so they don't want to give it to their youth, but are happy to give it to Western youth. There are obviously also concerns about the Chinese government using this app to steal personal information from its users. Is there actually a positive argument to be made for social media? How can anyone think spending time on your phone and watching what people, most of whom you don't know, are up to is anything other than idiotic? I kind of see what you mean. I'm getting some weird racial tension here with the China problems. Wrong. Society itself is the cancer. Social media is just a symptom of a cancerous society with technology that it does not have the cultural capacity to handle without causing self-harm. Cancer is when something imperfect replicates itself and is unable to stop. Human civilization was doing this long before the computer was invented. Post it on social media. Touché. Okay, I like that argument, but I don't, because it's like, oh, you hate consumerism, then why iPhone, huh? It's that similar argument. I don't fully agree with OP, but I also don't like this argument. Any particular reason you have for why it has no effect on Eastern societies? Oh, interesting. I guess they don't. They never responded. I remember when rock and roll music was doing that. I remember when video games were doing that. This is literally every generation about something that's insanely popular with young people. I agree with what you're saying, but I also do agree that TikTok it's dangerous. My screen time, my God, I need professional help, I think. X is destroying our society has to be the most repeated statement throughout human history. Well, everybody thinks that they know what's happening, and in reality, none of us do. Here we go, specifically blaming TikTok again, LOL. Though once again, admittedly, TikTok, it's just so easy to consume and waste hours of time. I don't know how it's happening to me. Okay, boomer. This is such a lazy view, in my opinion. You can't think of any value that may come from an internationally accessible set of platforms that allow for instant global communication. Yeah, I mean, just by being internet and social media doesn't make it bad. There are definitely a lot of good pros, and there are definitely cons. It's just figuring out what the cons are. Yikes. What the hell's happening to this website? It's like a bunch of pessimistic incel types are flooding Reddit with their shitty opinions lately. Lately? I thought that was always the norm. Dude, I think you're just old. You sound like someone complaining about TV in 1999. It's ideology spread through social media. Social media is just the medium. Do you mean ideology? I don't know. We'll move on. ChangeMyView, flaking has become too normalized and should be more condemned. I can say I have never flaked on someone in my life, and I take pride in that. It's just a disgusting thing to do and shows a lack of concern for people other than yourself. Yet in today's time, flaking has become so normal it's actually a bigger issue if you call it out. It's so normalized it's predictable, and I'm actually surprised when people keep their word. Imagine you had a watch that had the amount of time you had left to live. I walk past you and steal 2 hours. How would you feel about that? Would you call me out for this behavior, or would you go on about your business? What if multiple people did this consistently so you were losing 10 hours a week? What if we translate that time to money and now this person is taking $100 from you? Most people would see this as a problem, I believe. That's basically what flaking is. When you agree to meet, hang out, date, whatever, you're taking someone's time. Say you're meeting at 5 to 9. That's 4 hours blocked away. But you also have to take into account the preparation time, which is on the low end an hour. You should also give time in case it runs late, so there's another hour. That's 6 hours of your life. It also keeps you from pre-filling that time with other things you may want to do. Maybe you can find something else to do, but chances will be making last-minute plans won't be something as good as you could have planned. Yeah, sometimes emergencies come up, but very rarely, and most of the emergencies aren't emergencies at all. It's really just, I don't feel like it. There's so much defense for flaking, people have been gaslit into accepting it, where if you actually expect people to keep their word, you're the bad person. To conclude, I think flaking should be more condemned and frowned upon rather than accepted as normal. Also, flaky people are shit. Speaking as a minorly flaky person myself, I'm sorry. I know it's not good. I don't want to flake, but my brain won't let me just have fun. Define flaking, because people just not feeling down to hang after plans get made is fine. If they wouldn't enjoy it, I wouldn't want to hang out with them. Flaking as in you make plans with someone and then at the last minute they cancel or they just ghost or never show up. As a flaky person, you still have to communicate. You can't just not tell them that you're not going to be there. You have to make up an excuse at the very least. How often does this happen to you that it prompted you to make this thread? Because if it happens to you a lot and from different people, either you have a really bad circle of friends and family, or well, you might be the problem, and they just don't want to hang out with you in particular without outright saying it. You're not wrong for saying it, but it is mean to point it out a little bit, even though you might have to. The way I see it, if someone is flaking you constantly, then he/she isn't someone you want to hang out with. Unless it's things like he/she has really effing shitty job and constantly has to be on call. But I agree, in the age of social media/texting, where you can get bite-sized social interaction anytime and anywhere, some people doesn't seem to care about losing friendship/trust from flaking. And you shouldn't waste your time and effort on pleasing people like that. Flaking is a problem that solves itself. When someone flakes out on you too much, you stop making plans with them. Problem solved. Ultimately, yeah, that's kind of all you can do. If you notice somebody is flaking that often on you, stop making plans. I don't know. I have really bad social anxiety, so I'll plan to do something and think I'll be able to do this. When the moment comes, I kind of become paralyzed with fear, so yeah, it's hard, but I end up messaging the person on the day anyways. But sometimes people end up feeling like crap and their mental health maybe takes a dive or something. We are human. Things aren't as black and white, as we can't look into the future and see how we feel in the moment of meeting, etc. Anxiety is another big reason that a lot of people start flaking, because it's just the societal pressure around whatever event you're going to, and even just interacting with your friends can be stressful if you're in a bad mental state, so I fully understand this. I wonder if technological advancements have made people so accessible and social demands have surpassed a sustainable threshold that flaking is a way to cope with the threat to our autonomy. Actually, sorry, that's the vibe I'm getting from this answer, but I do agree with it. In the age of texting and phone calls and social media, everyone is available all the time, and I personally don't like being available all the time. I value my downtime. Personally, I like when people flake on me, because it instantly tells me everything I need to know about their character. Hopefully you're not making these judgments based on the first flake event, because sometimes things happen, obviously, so if you're judging their entire character based on missing one event, that's a little strange. But if it's multiple occurrences, then yeah, of course. I don't think it is normalized. I just think there are people who do it, and people who are willing to tolerate it. Don't be one of those people. Don't tolerate it. This sounds more like you need to change our view, LMAO. What evidence do you have that people are more flaky than before? Apparent from your apparently bad friend circle. Nah, people are allowed to back out at any time. Yes, ideally say so beforehand and don't leave it till last minute. Their life, man. So long as you properly communicate, flaking is okay in certain circumstances. And if you get flaked on, ultimately, you can't control the other person. So you kind of just have to deal with it, unfortunately. It's not a great thing to do, but it's a very human thing to do. And at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. When someone flakes on you, it's not like they're putting significant harm on you. Sure, they might waste a little bit of your time, but did they stab you? I don't think so. Are you a retail manager who's just had an employee quit on them because you made them come in on their day off for the 8th time in a row? It's more likely than you think. Me reading the title thinking it's about skin flaking, sorry, I guess I'll try to wear more sunscreen. Change my view. Men and women shouldn't be comparing about each gender's hardships, but instead should be helping one another. I'm primarily talking about first world countries such as the US, but I don't know. Perhaps it's because I'm online way too much, but when I'm online, I see a lot of people comparing each gender's hardships, and I'm really starting to get annoyed with people who keep on comparing each gender's hardships and seeing who suffers more. The truth of it, in my opinion, is that both have different hardships that balance out in the end. Men are usually more homeless and less likely to graduate college, for example, while women are more likely to get SA. I'm not sure about this, so forgive me if I'm wrong. There's no need to compare. Instead, we should be uplifting one another. Why is this in Change My View? Why would you want this view to be changed? Or are you trying to change other people's views? I essentially agree with you, but I'll refute this. There's no way to know that our hardships are balanced. There will never be a way to know, and there will never be a way to perfectly balance them. And even if we did perfectly balance them, we wouldn't know that we had. I think there is a value in comparing to see what struggles come from gender and where solutions might be found. For example, if a woman says that they struggle with being sexualized in the workplace and our response is, "Shut up, you shouldn't complain about your gender's hardships," then we won't be able to solve that problem. Even if we look at sexual harassment more broadly, it is leaving out a vital piece of the puzzle if we can't look at how one gender is treated differently. This seems like more of a rant than a CMV post. That's what I'm saying. Like, are they asking for people to change their opinion? Like, do they want to be misogynistic? I don't get it. This is a pretty reasonable view that really can't be challenged. The only thing would be that, for the most part, ideologically and theoretically, people aren't really doing this. Legal-wise, academic-wise, etc. The rank and file, especially online, do this every day, but be charitable and just realize maybe someone's hurting pretty bad from mistreatment and lashing out. I think bringing to light each other's hardships is how you build empathy for each other, though, or at least it's supposed to do that. Both genders need to remember it's a two-way street in a lot of ways, though, and not expect the other to just completely only listen to them. Ultimately, we all need to come just once, you know? Let's just crank it. Who cares? Ultimately, if people are able to come together and collaborate and discuss their individual problems together, they can find similarities, and we'll figure out we're all not that different. Obviously, there are specific problems to specific people, but it's, gray areas. Helping people is key. A great way to know how to help people is to listen to the way that they are afflicted by hardship. Like, maybe they tell you about how their gender experiences the world, and you could take that in, reflect on that, and make better decisions in the future. You know what? That's probably a waste of time. Let's be reactionary on the internet instead. Being reactionary is a lot more fun. That's why sometimes I wish I could be conservative, because they believe in magic, dude. Like, that's so cool. CMV, society as a whole would have a better dating life if women just approached men they like. So the inherent rules are these. Men have to approach the woman have to be naive and reserved. That's the perfect recipe for a good dating interaction. Only that it is total BS. Modern society doesn't really care about gender roles in dating that much, but women just stick to them because it's easier that way. Women do not have to approach or confess their feelings? Easy. Women do not have to have initiative? Easy. Women have zillions of guys that want to have sex with them, and it's up to them choosing the ones they like? Easy. What is the hard part, to my understanding, that from those zillions of guys, the ones that they actually like do not approach them? Any solution coming to mind? I'm like halfway agreeing with you because yeah, of course, it would be nicer and a little bit easier if women just approach the men that they like. But there is the flip side where men might feel emasculated if a woman approaches and asks them out. I mean, you see guys react to women proposing. Like, I don't know, it's weird. I prefer the status quo. It's not as messy to ask out the woman I like rather than being asked out. I'd rather be rejected than have to let women down gently or tell them to stop contacting me. How would this make society better exactly? It would make dating harder and more dangerous for women, but easier for some men. But not the men who would complain about this though, because men who complain about it tend to be the men who get rejected a lot. If women do the approaching, the men who aren't desired still won't be being approached, so they'll approach women, get rejected, and still think women never approach men. Oh wait. Okay, I'm glad somebody else kind of picked up on the incel-y vibe to this because, yikes, it just, I don't know, it does scream like, why don't women approach me, huh? I'm a good-looking guy. I don't want to be mean to OP, I don't know what you look like, you're probably fine, you need to work on personality a little bit. I don't know I agree. Out of my friend group, colleagues, and classmates, the girls definitely do shoot their shot. Even when out clubbing, the girls are the ones who flirt openly with guys they are interested in. If a girl rejects you, it's 'cause she doesn't want you, and that's probably why she didn't approach you first. Most of the couples I know now, they either met online or the girl asked the guy out. That's the majority. I approach men I like, and so do all of women I know well. The fact that women don't approach you doesn't mean they don't do it with other people. Most countries I lived, or all, are completely gender neutral when it comes to approaching. Never saw anyone complaining about this topic out of Reddit. I think for many women, it takes time to develop attraction. Sure, some may be physically attracted to some men, but I don't think it's the same magnitude as the true emotional attraction. So I don't think many women would feel incentivized enough to approach first. Man, I love it when some rando acts like a huge portion of the population acts like a monolithic hive mind with zero individuality. I know, right? High five! Change my view. Men sitting and peeing should be normalized. Now hang on, they might be cooking here. I will preface this with saying that I tend to avoid public restrooms in general when I can, and if I encounter a public restroom, I will use the urinals instead. Something about sitting in public restrooms doesn't sit very well with me. However, in the comfort of your own home or a friend's or a family member's home, sitting while peeing should be the norm. I bring this up because anytime I mention to my friends that I will sit and pee when I am home, they respond in a matter of shock and confusion. It is often followed by ridicule and jokes, which obviously I find them funny. However, I never understood why this isn't a normal thing. My points for sitting and peeing are: 1, it's cleaner. 2, it is more comfortable. 3, it is more efficient. 4, if living with female counterparts, there are less toilet lid movements. Who the F judges you while you're in the bathroom? You'd be surprised, a lot of people do. Because, sitting down to pee, that's for girls. And guys, you have to stand. Come on. The problem with men sitting to pee is they still need to aim. If not careful, the tip of the urethra can be pointed at the gap between the lid and the bowl, causing a stream of urine to run down the outside of the bowl and soaking the floor and his pants. So this now requires the penis user to be manipulating the penis between their legs in a seated position. I hate that you said it because this has happened to me. And I'm not proud. Why am I saying this? MF, stop trying to over-optimize pissing. You walk to the toilet, pull your pants down, pee for 10 seconds, then leave. Okay, but what if I'm trying to go for a world record? I need to optimize this pissing session so I can move on. Buddy, the stall door closes. You can do what you wish in there. And at home, there's nobody in the bathroom with you. I sit and pee all the time, and only God can judge me on that one. You do have a good point, but the OP did mention that sitting in public restrooms is a little gross. I don't know. I think it's pretty normal for men to sit in general. It is. It's a very human thing to do, sitting. But when I sit down, I poop, and I don't want to poop every time I pee. Apparently, how people take a piss is serious business that needs weekly internet discourse. I would surely hope so. Why normalize it? Why does something need to be normalized? Just do it. Why do so many people on Reddit need the entire world to advocate for their choices? Just sit and piss if you want to sit and piss. You don't need someone to approve it. And beyond the jokes, no one really gives a flying F. You could piss doing a handstand. I mean, admittedly, that would be a little difficult, but very impressive at the same time. Change my view. AI is currently very overblown. I feel as though the talk around AI is a bit overblown. In its current form, people act as if it's going to make all jobs obsolete except for a select few in the country. The tech community seems to be talking an awful lot like how they did with the .com boom, and sort of how people spoke about crypto a little under a decade ago. To be clear, I do think that it will change some things, for some people, but it's not human. It doesn't know what it's doing, hence where the broad versus narrow AI conversation comes from. If we end up with broad AI as opposed to the current narrow AI we have today, then that's a different story. But I don't think narrow AI leads to broad AI necessarily, and will be built by someone else entirely at some point in the future. But when that comes, then everything really will change. I think that, at this point, we have a very helpful tool that is going to progress some. But the notion that it's just going to infinitely get better every year just seems like marketing hype from people with a vested interest in it. The other tech companies are pushing their money into AI because it's the current next big thing, and that they know there's a risk of missing out if it does come true. Maybe I'm wrong, who knows? But I'm extremely skeptical of a bunch of people overhyping a technology, because it's a cycle that happens over and over again. I've seen people say that it's the biggest thing since the invention of the World Wide Web, or even just the computer in general. The latter comparison just seems silly, to be frank. I'm fully open to hearing how this is different, and I have no strong bias against it, but this current form of AI leading to some massive leap in the next year or two just seems wrong to me, as of now. As a friend of mine said, keep in mind this is the worst AI will ever be, and it's already really impressive. You are not wrong that the current AI is in its infancy, but you underestimate how dumb the average people are. I can't change your view, OP. I feel the same. The term AI has been taken by marketing departments and used for everything from a pregnancy test strip to the Reddit feed currently pushing ads on you. It's just math doing math. Intelligence, sentient or artificial, requires an unsolicited desire to learn. If there's code instructing it accordingly, it's not intelligence, it's executing algorithms. Currently overhyped, perhaps, but also unregulated. If it stays unregulated, I think that's when it will become scary. It could very easily take jobs, and that is a huge deal. It already has been. I'll never get that argument of, oh, AI will take over your jobs. What jobs are we talking about? If it can take over at McDonald's, sure. Nobody wants to work at McDonald's. That's about all the time we have today. Thank you all once again for watching. My name's Brandon.